Hello, my name is David Lee, and today I'd like to show you how to get started with developing a serverless GraphQL API hosted in Azure. So in this example today, I'll be demoing, I am actually using this library called Eklee-Azure-Functions-GraphQL. And in the example, I have created a quiz spa application frontend using Angular, and the backend is using this library Eklee-Azure-Functions-GraphQL. So let's get started. First of all, let's do a git clone on the front end. Next, we'll do a git clone on the back end. All right, so we have completed getting the code for both the front end and the back end, and now we are ready to launch the front end code with Visual Studio Code. So let's go ahead and cd into the front end, and we'll just do code dot to launch Visual Studio Code. Excellent. So next we will go ahead and launch the backend with Visual Studio 2019, and we'll simply browse to the API itself, double click on the solution. Excellent. So with both projects launched, we will go ahead and start configuring both the front end and the back end with security. In this demo, we'll be using Azure Active Directory. So let's go ahead and launch our portal with Azure Active Directory. All right, so when you launch your Azure Active Directory, there is a section called App Registration. And here we'll go ahead and do a new registration to register our app. I'm just going to call it my simple demo. I am just going to make it single tenant. Here, this is the redirect URL, which is the SPA application where the SPA application is being hosted by default locally when you try to run ng-serve. So we're just going to go ahead and do localhost 4200. We're going to go ahead and hit register to register that. All right, very good. So next we will go ahead and configure the authentication, and we will enable ID token. And we'll go ahead and hit save. All right, now that we have configured our application, we are ready to associate our application with our user. So let's go back to Azure Active Directory, go to Enterprise Application, click on our application, and now let's click on Assign Users and Groups, or we also have users and groups right here. Go ahead and hit Add User, and we'll select our demo user. There isn't a default role, so we can just leave it blank and just hit Assign. And now our user has been assigned access to the application. Next, we will want to look at two things. We would like to capture the application ID and also the tenant information. So let's go ahead and click back to our Azure Active Directory. Go back to app registration. All right, let's capture the application ID, and we'll also capture the tenant ID, which we'll need to use shortly. All right, let's go ahead and put in the information into our Eklee-Quiz API backend. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in the audience information. The audience is the application itself. So the assignment is to the application itself. That's where we put in the application ID here. The issuer is the tenant. So in the world of Azure Active Directory, this is where we can put in the tenant's ID, and this is what identifies what issue, who issues the token. Go ahead and save that and run the application. All right, very good. So the application is now running, and we are going to go to the front end, and we're first going to do an npm install to install all the different dependencies. And because this is going to take a little bit of time, I am going to pause the video here. All right, looks like the application npm install did work. And so the next thing that we're going to do is configure the environment file for the security settings. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to navigate to source, environments, and then we're going to open up the environments.ts file. And then we're going to try to populate the client ID, the tenant, and the endpoint. So we'll go back here. So the client ID is going to be the application ID. And the tenant, that's going to be the Azure Active Directory tenant ID. And then the API itself, we'll actually use this API graph endpoint. So this endpoint is actually obtained by simply going to your GraphQL API that is running locally and just copying that. Obviously, on the Azure portal, when you deploy it to an Azure App Service, this will be that URL. All right, very good. So now we are ready to run our application. So we're going to do an ng serve. And you can see that it is compiling right now. And because that's, well, we'll wait for it. All right, so the Angular application is now running on this URL right here. So we're going to go ahead and copy that. And we'll go back to our browser. So notice that I'm already logged in and I have been assigned the application already. So and as you can see, the GraphQL endpoint is being accessed, and the front-end application is accessing it, right? And there's a lot of logging going on. Let's go ahead and go to quizzes, add a quiz. Just gonna do a title for the quiz. Let's make it public. I'm going to hit Save Changes. We'll go back to the GraphQL endpoint, and we can see that it's executed. So there was a execution to create a quiz using GraphQL syntax. And there was a API to query the GraphQL endpoint for the quiz itself. Very good, and that concludes my demo for today. Thank you so much for watching.